All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Enjoy the Walk podcast. As scheduled, a little later than what we expected, but happy to bring this next guest on the show with us. We met him down at the PGA show in 2020, where he debuted his, what I think is a really game-changing product on the side of greens reading and really helping you understand where you're at with on the green and get you to drain those putts here in 2020. So without further ado, we'd like to welcome Jeff Mocini onto the show. Jeff, how are you, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
For sure. And, as we said last week in our show recording, got a little jumbled up in our audio, so we kind of had to re-record. So this won't be the live recording that we had from down in Florida, but we're still happy to get back and get your story out to the public and talk a little bit about your product and some of the things people can look forward to with you and Slopegraide here in 2020.
Yeah, I love that. Let's get into it.
Sure thing. So first things first, let's get into who Jeff Mocini is a little bit. When did you first pick up a club and what got you down the path of making golf your living?
Well, I would say when I was younger, I know that my father worked a lot, and I figured out at a very early age that he was a golf professional at one of my local clubs in the little hometown of Saugatuck, Michigan, where I grew up. And he put a club in my hand when I was about 5 years old, and we did a lot of the basic stuff around the practice area, from chipping to putting. But what got me hooked was a moment on the driving range where I had these like La Jolla Junior golf clubs that had these like graphite shafts. So pretty much they like had a lot of flex, so that it made it a lot easier for me to hit the ball. And I remember there was like 100-yard pin that I was aiming towards, because I guess that driving range had like actual golf holes lined up for people to aim at. And I remember one shot that I hit where I saw the ball disappear in the 100-yard pin. And I turned around. I was like so excited. I was like, Dad, did you see that? And then I knew from that moment on that golf was going to be something that was going to play a major role in my life, simply because of the rush of excitement and adrenaline that I got from hitting that shot. And ever since, it's been an amazing journey. I've learned a lot, and I'm looking to find ways to give back to the game, for it's been so nice to me over the years.
That's awesome. And I think, Dante can speak on it too a little bit. And it's what Isaiah, who couldn't quite join us here this evening, calls, you got bit by that bug. And what I always relate it to is my favorite movie on the planet when it comes to golf is Tin Cup. And the way his caddy says, or I'm sorry, the way Tin Cup says when he's teaching the lessons, when you hit that ball just so perfectly, you can feel it deep down in your loins. And I know for our PG listeners out there, it might not be the greatest thing in the world to say, but it's so true for me. The minute you hit something so flush or so pure, or just you watch a ball go in the hole from somewhere outside of 10 feet even, it brings a certain kind of excitement and gets you so ecstatic that you just can't wait to do it again.
Yeah. That's I was thinking when he was describing that, Jeff, when you're on the range, I was just thinking the entire scene where he's talking about the swing in Tin Cup perfectly pretty much analyzes that. But yeah, you're right, Dalton, man. It takes that one swing, or even when you start, hearing that like that off the club, nice little flush sound, and then you start seeing the ball go in the flight. It's the same, you get like a nice little draw or like a nice little cut. You see the same flights that you see some of the pros. Once you start doing that, that's where that bug's starting. That's deep inside, and now you're hooked. That was my story right there.
Mm-hmm.
One little range session is all it takes, ladies and gentlemen. So get out there and get on your own, because it might just happen to you. But so Jeff, you said you grew up in Michigan, and I know when we met you down in Florida, you said you actually were residing pretty close to within an hour drive or so around Orlando. So what made you make the move from Michigan down to the Florida area?
Well, I'm going to backtrack to my college years. I played at the University of Findlay, a Division II school in the Great Lakes Intercollegiate Athletic Conference from 2007 to 11. And I was looking at my senior year. I played my final tournament, and I'm looking at being in Michigan for the summer, and I realized that the fall was coming, where it was starting to get colder, what snow was going to be on the ground. And it just got to thinking, I'm like, I can't do this. Like, there's there's no way that I can only play golf for like 6 months out of the year. So I was going to do whatever it takes to get down to Florida. And I just got my computer science degree at that point, and I literally found a job in Tallahassee 3 months later. So that was my entry into Florida. And then I found that I was looking to find other opportunities, and then I found where my current full-time job in Melbourne is, and then I moved down there in 2014, and that's where it created the crossroads of being a stone's throw away from Orlando, Jacksonville, or Miami, and it's just like the absolute perfect spot in my opinion because it's away from all the noise that's there, but at the same time it's close.
Sure,
Yeah, I
and
think for any golfer out there, if you can somehow take your career and venture either south or west to the warmer states, just do it. Because these winter months, man, I'm itching to get out there and playing.
Yeah, and I noticed that a lot of the pros were residing down there. I guess it was just blind faith at the time, but I was just kind of following a passion that I've had to play at the highest level to see how far I can get. And to do that, you have to play with players that are going to be better than you at the time. Because if you're the best player in your group, you're not going to be growing at all. You're just going to plateau, and chances are you end up more frustrated than you're going to be grateful for, simply because you're seeing the same thing over and over again. But you learned a lot from failure. You learned a lot from inner pain and suffering that you might experience on the course just from wanting to perform at a level that you feel like you're capable of. But you kind of have to go through those moments of being humbled, which golf provides a lot. And the best way to do that is to play with a lot better players because it will force you to raise your level. Otherwise, you're not going to make it very long down there.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
absolutely there.
phenomenal advice. And I think, Isaiah, who we've had always have on this podcast, kind of got into that when we asked him what advice he would give players that are looking to either go and play in college or looking to make that transition from playing college golf and looking to chase down a professional life. And that was kind of the exact advice he gave. And something we always like to ask anyone who's had that experience in college golf, or making the transition from high school to college golf is what advice you would give to maybe players looking to chase down that avenue. So, I mean, you already touched on a lot of really good advice kind of in the previous little couple, 3 minutes there, but what would maybe be something else that you would maybe build upon with that to give advice to kids looking to chase a career in golf?
Well, I think the most important advice that I could give based on my experience is don't make it your identity. Simply because if you make it your identity, then you have given up all power to create happiness within yourself. And golf is just one of many things that life has to offer. And if you just wrap your head around performance, you're going to have a very misguided view of how your life is because you feel like you're being judged by your performance instead of all the great gifts that you have and all the great gifts that you could share with the people that you interact with. So it's being mindful about the thoughts, behaviors, and actions that you have when you're out on the golf course. And if it's not consistent with creating the conditions necessary within yourself to create peak performance, then you're going to have to take a step back and figure out, okay, what small step goals can I create when I'm playing in tournaments so that when I'm walking out here, whether I shoot 80 or 70, I can look at it and say, okay, I grew today. Now I can step back and put on this hat, the hat that I know is why my family, my friends, and everybody that I interact with, that's why they love me. So it's very important to separate golf from everything else because I've seen so many people go down that trap and it makes things infinitely difficult. I mean, you could take Ronda Rousey, for example, when she was at the top of her game in the UFC, and then it only took 1 foot from Holly Holm to send her in a frenzy.
Yeah. And it's crazy too, because I found myself, it's really neat that you bring this up, and I'm glad you did, because I found myself, even at the Division III level, kind of falling into this trap as soon as I got into college, because I felt like I was fighting for a spot right off the bat. And then if I wasn't playing up to my ability or up to my potential, then what was I? Like, I went to college to play golf and study architecture, but I felt that like the second half, that being playing golf, was like I had to live up to, well, I went there to play golf. And if I didn't live up to the expectations of playing golf while doing architecture and made my number such a big part of who I was, like, okay, I shot 73 today. All right, well, what's everyone else shooting? Okay, well, I was in the 3 or 4 spot today. I need to get to, 1 or 2 to be comfortable. Or, then you get in a tournament setting, and then all of a sudden your 73 is a 1 and 2 on your team, but then you're 12th or 15th or 20th. And then, your number that becomes you starts falling down very rapidly the better competition you get to. And it took me a while to kind of realize and say, hey, it's just a game. And there's so much more to life than a number on a scorecard. That it's the friendships and camaraderie that's on a golf team. It's the relationships you make with the coach and the trainer and everyone else that's surrounding your golf team, your fans that come out. I mean, on a D3 level, we didn't have many fans, but it was my parents. It was affecting my relationship with my parents at some point, just thinking I was a number. So I think that's such a profound way to kind of let kids know that, like, listen, it's a competition, and yes, your number matters, but it's not your everything.
Yeah, I want to add this too. You could play the best golf that you've ever had in your life in a tournament and still lose, simply because somebody else had a career day, and that's not in your control. So that's why it's very important to not look at the outcomes of the tournaments that you play in, but rather how well you manage yourself on the course. That's where you pretty much separate yourself from your competitors most of the time anyway.
Sure. And it's on career rounds like that you have to, like you said, kind of step back and say, all right, well, I got beat, but I didn't get beat because like I beat me. He just beat me as a competitor, as an athlete, as a golfer. Someone else just came out and beat me, but I still gave it everything I had. I improved here, and here to get myself to this point, to have a career day. Let's appreciate the fact that I did have a career day and build upon that, and maybe have another career day somewhere down the road to where no one, I mean, like you said, there's always a point where someone's going to beat you. That's golf, that's sport, that's life. But it's always good to just be able to step back from the number and say, hey, you know what? I enjoyed my day. And that's what we're all about here, is just kind of letting people realize that, hey, listen, you can enjoy this game of golf no matter how well or bad you're playing, or what level you're at, whether it's professional or amateur, or your Saturday hack with a bunch of buddies out there with a case of beer. I mean, it's have your fun playing the game.
I'm going to say weekend warrior just to be nice to that crowd.
We appreciate that term.
Yeah.
It's all right. The group I play with mostly, we call ourselves the hack brigade. So, but yeah, sometimes you just got to take a step back and just really see the big picture, rather than, like you were saying, that individual, and trying to kind of just making sure that you don't beat yourself up throughout the round. That's almost a success in my book, because I get in between my ears pretty quick, and it's something I'm working on. Granted, it's just weekend games or just small amateur stuff, but I enjoy that grind. But you got to really take a step back and look at that. It's not really necessarily just the number, it's what else, what's the overall picture. And I think Orlando definitely helped me see that side a lot fuller.
Yeah. Because one of the best pieces of advice that I've gotten was, you can only play your best once.
That's it's deep right there.
I like that. That's
so pretty much
yeah,
like so pretty much just give it everything that you have every time you step it out there, and your best round is going to come one time, and that's it.
Crazy way to think about it, whether it's in golf or in life. There's going to be one best, and whether you keep besting your previous best, but at the end of the day, there is only going to be one best. And I think that's a pretty neat way to look at it, from just a kind of grand, zoomed out macro perspective of it all. Is a pretty neat way to think about it. So anyone out there listening that's maybe, thinking of giving it a go at the college level or the professional level, just kind of listen over that last 5-8 minutes of what we talked about. It's something you can take to heart when approaching the game at a competitive level and looking at it seriously down the line. Well, I think, one thing I'd love to touch on too, as we get deeper into, who you are and what brought you to designing Slopegraide. We talked a little bit previously when we were in Florida about you being a veteran and kind of giving your services to the organizations that you had in the past. So I'd love for you to touch on a little bit of, said you were a computer sciences major.
Yes.
Okay. So that played a huge part into, I would imagine, on the, application side of things, getting into Slopegraide. So let's just jump right into Slopegraide then.
Sure.
How did this idea come about to say, hey, we need a better product for people to easily accessibly read greens?
Well, I want to first and foremost say that I am a aim point golf advocate. For those of you who don't know what that is, aim point is what Adam Scott, Justin Rose, among other PGA Tour players use when reading greens, where they hold their fingers up like this. They're essentially gauging the slope of the ground with their feet or lower extremities. And they're using the body sensations that they feel in their legs to determine different slope percentages that they've trained themselves on. And I remember one day when I was playing, I felt that whole sequence of gauging the slope with my feet, with the feeling of my legs, was off. I kept missing every putt on the low side, it seemed like, and I hit the ball very well. So at the end of the day, I think I have like 34, 35 putts, shoot 75, 76, and I'm just frustrated. I pretty much take my clubs off the cart, go straight to the practice green, because I'm like, I can't leave without making a few putts and seeing them go in the hole. So I pulled out my level to gauge what slopes I missed putts on. And I got to a point where I started looking silly, just kind of like moving the level from place to place to place, doing long-term damage to my back, in my honest opinion. And I just got to thinking to myself, there's got to be a better way to do this. Like, there's got to be a more quicker and efficient way to recalibrate yourself with aim point. So then I became present to what I was feeling in my body when I went from slope to slope. And I noticed that there was a little shift happening in my hips laterally. And then the moment that happened, I imagined the level being split into 3 parts, where I would wear the middle piece and the other 2 ends of the level would be my 2 legs. So I was like, the moment that happened, I was off to the races. I was trying to figure out any way that I could to have this grand vision or epiphany that I had on the putting green into life. And 3 years later, we came up with Slopegraide, golf's first wearable green reading system that's comprised of this sensor that you wear at your midsection, and it gauges the shift that naturally happens in your hips when you're standing on an uneven slope. And it takes that data that measures like the tilt in your hips and converts it into a measurable slope percentage or slope degrees value that's displayed in real time on your iPhone or Apple Watch.
So now, just for the folks at home, when you said hips laterally, can you maybe explain, how that's really working, or a little bit more like layman's terms of what you're reading with that product? Because I think that's a huge part of how it interacts.
Yes. So I'm going to keep it very simple in terms of math. There is a trapezoid that's formed with your waist, your 2 legs, and the ground that you're standing on. And as one side of the trapezoid changes, which is the slope, your legs shift this way. And in order for your hips to stay parallel, it has to the hips have to shift to compensate for it. So what the sensor is going to do is, when you wear it on your midsection, it's going to move along with your hips laterally, so that you're always getting an approximate value of the slope that you're standing on.
And that's awesome. And I think where it's so neat to talk about, like from when Dante and I were able to experience it in person, in hand, on the floor at the PGA show, and immediately within 2 seconds of you calibrating it and putting it on my belt buckle, pretty much, I was immediately able to understand where my left foot was from my right, and kind of the little bit of, I guess, one ball out slope that was there at the time. And I would love for you to get into a little more too of how, so this sensor that you put on Now it has to go pretty central to your waist, so pretty
Yeah,
much
pretty
close
close.
to your belt buckle.
Yep.
Okay.
It has
So
to be in the center point, because if you put it on one side versus the other, you're going to have slopes that are very severe one way, but very quiet the other way, because there's a lot more ground to cover when it's on one side.
I was gonna say, basically that trapezoid that you talked about, you want to
Yep.
be on the center point of that trapezoid
Correct.
to get that correct kind of slope reading.
Yes.
Very cool.
So if you, after you calibrate it, which you said, it only takes about 2 to 3 seconds. It's
Super
very,
quick.
very simple. You can go anywhere on the green, and with one click of a button, you're going to get instantaneous feedback on your iPhone or Apple Watch.
Now, for our podcast listeners who can't see what we're watching, he has the Slopegraide sensor in his hand, which is about the size of a belt buckle, a little smaller. And he's also got his phone on his right hand, which is, as he's turning this device left, right, based on a center axis, it's giving you percentages, 1.5, 2, 2.53, soft or hard, or vice versa, left or right, to let you know where this putt's going to break based on how much weight is in your right foot or how much percentage is on your left foot. And it's instantaneous. I mean, and the coolest part about it, which I would love for you to get in, is how it's tailored to the person wearing it. It's not like a rangefinder that's just like, okay, you eye it and then you're good. This device tailors to the person that's wearing it.
That's a very important detail that I was just about to get into, because we're all going to stand differently. We all have different leg lengths. We all have different ways that our hips are created. So a one size fits most approach was never going to work. So we have to, first and foremost, before every use, we have to teach the sensor what a flat surface is based on its position that when it's being worn. So that's when you go through the calibration sequence, it's going to analyze how you stand on a zero surface. So, and then it's going to take that position and use that as a reference point, so that when you go on different slopes, it's going to use that reference point in its calculations of calculating slope in real time.
And that's what I thought was so sick about it, because at the show, you had your booth set up, you had, about maybe a 15-foot putt that had a little bit of slope to it. And when Dalton and I, you put the device on, we're taking the same exact putt, yet we have 2 different reads of slope. And I thought that was pretty outstanding to see, because like you said, it's trying to find the zero gravity for each person. And that's what I think is the biggest key to your tool and your device, is just that sole fact right there. Because like you said, we're just going to, we will have two different reads, even though it's the same putt.
And it's approximately within 0.5%, more or less. And what's also more important that I didn't mention just now is that you could have hip mobility that's different. Like, you may not be able to move your hips laterally as well as somebody else. So I want to show here for those watching on YouTube that there is a sensitivity gauge that you can increase the, sorry if I'm bumping the mic, you can increase the sensitivity of it, so I can go through and have that same same process.
Here's a perfect opportunity for us to kind of take a pause in the action and say, check us out at _enjoy the walk on Instagram and Twitter. And you can also check out Slopegraide on Instagram at Slopegraide, SLOPEGRAIDE. And Jeff posts some awesome in-time videos and stuff on his Instagram, but I think he's got his little sensor back in action, and we are ready to rock.
So as you can see, I am barely moving it, but yet the gauge of getting the particular slopes,
it's going off the charts.
Yeah, it's going off the charts, which shows you that if you have limited hip mobility, you don't have to move your hips as much in order to get the approximate slopes that you're expecting.
I think that was the number one thing I took from it, was like, okay, there's obviously so many things out there that we use every day that are just one size fits all, whether it's mirrors or putting, I don't know a better word for it than like doohickeys, but just like putting little gadgets
training
and gizmos.
aids.
Yeah, but none of them reset their self to you. None of them are tailored to you in the way you stand, the way you approach the ball, and the way you set up. So that was the most powerful thing that I thought and like picked up immediately from this product was, okay, hey, it read Dante different than it read me, and we both drilled putts dead center. Like, obviously, right off the bat, that's something that's going to be, hey, I need to look further into this and see what this product is all about, because it was really neat to see in time, in person.
Yeah, we all have different putting styles. Some like to diet in the hole, some like to be more aggressive. And with that sensitivity gauge that I just showed, you can tweak it to your liking so that if you want to be more aggressive with your putts, you might not want as high as slopes being read into your phone or Apple Watch. But if you're one that likes to die putts in, you might want a sensitivity that's a little higher so that you'll be getting the high end of the slopes that you're standing on.
I'd love for you to get into
Interesting.
that a little bit as well. You had mentioned it works with your iPhone, but also your Apple Watch. So
Yep.
kind of maybe, get into a little bit of the fun that you can have with the Apple Watch and using that pairing right up with the sensor as well.
Yes. There was a setting in the menu that I just showed that said connect mode. So you could, with one press of a button, as long as you have the Apple Watch app opened, you can switch the Bluetooth connection from the sensor from your phone to your Apple Watch instantly. So that way you would not have to be required to carry your phone on you at all times, but rather just use your Apple Watch when you're practicing. So you could stand to a particular slope, just flick your wrist up, and it's going to automatically start the capture process of the data that's coming from the sensor and display slopes in less than a second.
That's awesome. And I think that kind of accessibility really speaks to just, I mean, obviously your computer science background, but just the way the integration between the sensor itself, the phone, and then obviously the Apple Watch as well, to be able to flick something like that in real time and say, okay, here's where I'm standing, and not have to go reach in my back pocket, fiddle with the phone. If the app's not open, all right, go open the app, get this, a simple flick of the wrist is where I think is such a powerful statement, to have that information right on your wrist, ready to go, stand where you need to stand, 2 seconds. Okay, that's what it is. Right back, set up, aim point, and then I'm ready to go.
Yes, I designed this with pace of play in mind because the natural instinct of people using this, they want to go on the course with it. So we designed a clip to assure that it's not going to drift out of its calibrated position when you're swinging clubs and walking, most importantly. Because if it drifts, then you have to recalibrate, and essentially every slope that you get after that is useless. So when you're playing, it's going to stay in that same spot based on how the clip is designed. So that way, if you want to just see some putts go in the hole and you want to build your confidence, you can just go out, play a few holes or whatever, get some reads, and then be encouraged knowing that you've read the putts correctly. You may not make every one, but you know exactly what it's going to do. So then it's just a matter of hitting it at the correct speed and, most importantly, make it a great stroke.
So now you kind of alluded to it a little bit there, but it's obviously a very great product for practice, and
Yep.
something that you can use over and over again during your practice rounds and things like that. Is there any is there any objective in the future, or any thoughts of getting it like approved by governing bodies, maybe to be able to help maybe even the pros with pace of play moving forward? Or is that something you think might be out of the realm of possibility with a product like this?
In terms of tournament play, it's out of the realms of possibility. I know that when people were visiting me on the show floor at the PGA show, that was like one of the first questions they asked, "Can I use this in tournaments?" And I said no, because it measures slope, and that's always been a rule has been in the rules of golf for decades. It just seemed like how you view things, really, like it's more of a way of training yourself to get better. So you do it on your own, so you wouldn't have to use this in tournaments. That's like the benefit of Slopegraide, is not only does it give you real-time slope data, but it also trains you to associate different feelings in your legs, so that when you're out playing a stipulated round that matters, you can associate different feelings. Like, for example, if I'm standing on a 1.5% slope, I'm going to look for like the strongest feeling in my right calf.
Yeah.
If I sense that right calf, I'll be like, okay, this is going 1.5%. and then I can go through my process and know that I've done the work to prepare myself for the moment of making that putt.
And yeah, that's what you're saying there, Jeff, is what I really like about it too, because I know we discussed before, we're talking about, we're moving so, we're advancing so much in technology, and, you see the pros, you got the TrackMan, you got all these type of different measuring devices to analyze data to, better the player. Yet, some of this data ends up, it takes the feel out of the game. With Slopegraide, you know, you're learning how to read greens, and you're getting more proper data that's telling you what that slope's going to be doing and how to make that putt. But at the same time, you're training your body to also feel that slope too. So you're kind of getting, killing two birds with one stone in a way, and that's, and I still think, and which is awesome, and which that's why I love your product so much, is because you're utilizing the technology, so you're staying with the way the game's moving, but you're also not taking the feel out of it.
That's exactly right. I've seen a lot of the pros fiddle with their green rating books. While they're helpful, it doesn't exactly teach you how to use reading greens without them. I think a lot of times the trap is getting so far dealt with green reading books that you lose sense of what those actual slopes are based on how you've trained yourself. Now I know they're doing a lot of practice on the green to train themselves with that, but my main thing is to speed up the game. Like, I don't want to fiddle around in an app to place where the ball is, place where the hole is, and then go through a ton of different colors and lines. I just want my number and go. So that was like the main opportunity that I saw, is that, okay, if I just provide simple but yet effective data that players could use to create their best moments on the course when they hit two great shots into the green or three, they'll be able to capitalize on it because they've taken out that guesswork and self-doubt of reading a green, so that they could just focus on the process that got them there in the first place.
And I love maybe to touch on a little bit of that, because I think a lot of people, whether they are, followers of the game or just kind of, your average day player that really don't know about it, I'd love to get into a little bit of maybe your explanation of how dense and like in depth these green reading books really are, and maybe why a green reading book is going to be a lot slower than, the person that has used Slopegraide and can just read on the fly with their legs on site, and maybe not take the time to decipher all of these little arrows that are on these green reading books. Because I feel like a lot, like the average person just really doesn't know what all is contained within these green reading books.
Well, I know that for the recreational golfer, there's going to be really no use for green reading books. That's why a lot of clubs don't carry them. But it's very useful for the competitive amateur and collegiate player or professional, because they understand that putting is where it separates yourself from good to great. But the thing is there's a lot of data in there that can overwhelm an average player, where there's like different contour lines. And if you're not trained on how the green reading book is made, you're going to get lost in it pretty quickly and confuse yourself pretty easily on where you don't want to hit it. And more often than not, you're going to focus on hitting it at that spot and then creating a hell of a two putt to convert from there.
I've even seen it on TV where the pros, that's the only time I've seen it, is when the camera zooms in and they're flipping through their book, and then you just see all these different type of lines and arrows, and it's just, to the average, weekend golfer, that's way over your head.
Yeah, and it's math. It's pretty much math that you have to do in your head very quickly. And as far as like Generation Z is concerned, the ones that are growing up with smartphones and smart watches from their moment of birth, they're not going to be interested in sorting through books. They're going to be wanting to be on their phone and connected, because that's what they grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it was a challenge to provide that ease of use, but at the same time, keeping them connected with the golf course, which is the most important thing.
Yeah, and I think basically at the end of the day, what your product does is take those insane green reading books that have a plethora of information that it could take an average Joe, 15, 20 minutes to parse through the understanding of how to read one single putt, if not longer, if they really have no clue what the heck they're looking at. But it takes all that information that's so jumbled and convoluted on these books, and it puts it into one little reading.
It gives you one little subset of where you're standing, which is essentially all you need at that point.
Correct. And it's the only pinpoint information that you need in that moment to make it happen and to make a judgment on a putt that you're going to make in the moment.
Yes.
So,
Yeah,
I mean,
it just works with today's society. Like you're saying, we want everything now. I mean, you just look at the way everything's moving. We want it now. So if we can get that data or whatever we want instantaneously, yeah,
we're going to get to a point where 2-day shipping's not good enough.
No,
Just watch.
I mean, yeah.
it's
Dude,
already
shipping.
the prime shipping for people isn't good enough anymore. And that's
Yeah,
one
no,
day.
I'm like, come on, guys. Yeah, you used to have to wait 2 to 3 weeks to get your stuff.
Yeah, I know.
I remember as a kid, this is throwing it back, and I'm only a mid-90s baby, but man, when I was a kid and the shipping was like 2 to 3 weeks, I was like, all right, that's so quick. And now if it's 2 to 3 days, people are yelling a storm, and oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Or they say 2 to 3 weeks, and it comes in like a week and a half, and you're just stoked. Just the fact that you're like, wow, this is fast.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. But I mean, that's what the market's looking for these days is something instantaneous. It's instantaneous information. It's why the rangefinder hit so well in the golf industry a couple years back. And it's why it's continuing to be the leading number one product that sells for average day golfers, is because it gives you the snap information. I don't have to walk off of anything. I don't have to take any other steps that I don't have to take. It's all of that compounded into one, and Slopegraide fits that bill for products that just give you the instantaneous information in the moment without you having to take extra steps that you don't need to take. So it was it was seriously a kind of epiphany for me, because I had never learned aim point until we met in person and kind of discussed obviously the crash course. I still don't know the full understanding, as I'm sure it takes a while to truly understand the bits and pieces of it all. But I think we've explained the crash course on here aim point wise, as far as what it does for you and how to help you get that consistency of judging what finger to read off of and stuff like that. So it's just an awesome product, in which I think, has extreme potential here in the market in 2020 and beyond that.
Yeah. So I think the key right now is to pretty much get it out there. That there's a solution available that will allow you to play better, allow you to train yourself to play tournament golf, knowing that you can become an expert green reader just from using this.
And
I know a buddy of mine that I play with at my course, and we kind of go back and forth. He's at the older generation X generation. We bicker back and forth with each other, and we're going at it. And one thing he struggles with is his putter, and I tell him it's between the ears, but I'll definitely send them your way, even though I don't want to, because I want to beat him. But for sure, yeah, I think this is definitely something he could use. So Dan, if you're listening, bring it.
Give it a rock.
No, but here's the thing, that if everybody's getting better, you're going to get better. I mean, it's kind of alludes to the point of playing with people that are better than you. Like, you have to elevate your game in order to keep up. I mean, I think everybody wins when you do that.
Exactly, for sure.
I think the number one kind of playing off of that of seeing you get better is a lot of the competitive players out there would love to know, did you yourself see a big jump in like strokes gained? Or
I did.
From the putting perspective, that's the kind of the number one thing statisticians look at. Statisticians, however you say that word.
Yes, when I was on the green, my 3-putt avoidance was pretty much less than 2%. Like I 3-putted only like less than 2% of the time, and I gained strokes. I gained strokes 70% of the time when I played in tournaments in 2018, when it was very at the heart and meat and potatoes of development. And I noticed there was like one time when I was chipping in a U.S. Open local qualifier where I'm starting to do some case studies of capturing slopes with Slopegraide the day before the qualifier with it, where I'm writing them down uh, in a notebook so I could take those measurements and use them to my advantage because I've done the work to get all that. And I found myself equidistant off the green to one of my data points. It was 3% going right to left. So I figured that if I put my chip shot in one particular spot on that green where I captured it and had it and pretty much had it check up like it was a putt, it was going to roll in if I put it right at that spot. And sure enough, I was about, I think, 3 over at the time, needed to birdie it out to force a playoff to get into sectionals. But I put it right in that spot. It literally rolled right like a putt, dead center, hits the flag, drops down from like, I don't know, 20 yards off the green. And I celebrated not because I made birdie, but because that was like the first aha moment that my data is valid, that I can trust it in the heart of competition. And knowing that a lot of the hard work and dedication that I've had to try to perfect it is paying off at that point. So I just pretty much evolved off that and kept taking it with me to tournaments because I know there's a lot of different grasses that you can make courses with, and some of the grasses can deceive the human eye. So that's why Slopegraide would be a main benefactor to that, because you're not only training your eyes, but you're also training your feel. And if you can incorporate more senses when visualizing your shots or putts, you're going to see them a lot more clearly. That's just the law of attraction right there.
Yeah, I think it was so evident too with Dante and I traveling down to the Florida area this past week with the PGA show and playing some golf down there. You know, we even spoke about just kind of the rough and the difference the ball had coming out of the rough down in Florida than what we were used to in the Northeast. And obviously it's 2 different grains of grass. And just to be able to take this device with you and to learn, all right, well, in the Florida area, here's how the ball reacts. And then, all right, well, here's in the Northeast how it reacts. And then you just start making mental notes. And then all of a sudden, you know how to play different shots based off of the kind of grass you're playing out of and the release points or the checkpoints or vice versa, and on how a ball is going to react. And like you said, it's becoming second nature if you carry this device around with you long enough to understand, all right, here's how it's reacting out of the green or out of the grass onto the green, here, there, and everywhere. And you're building a mental check set basically of everywhere that you need to, the shots you need to play. And Tiger always talks about building your library of shots.
Yep.
And muscle memory plays a huge part in building that library. And to be able to have this basically kind of checks and balances set that's right on your belt buckle and saying, all right, here's where I'm going to land it and here's where it needs to go. It's kind of doing the second half of the work for you at the end of the day.
And did I mention that it's very lightweight, so it feels like you are not wearing anything at all?
Yeah, I mean, I can second that, and Dante can third that. When we put this thing on, I almost forgot to take it off as I was walking away to give it to Dante. And then, Dante can speak about how lightweight it is.
Yeah, I mean, you don't even feel that it's even on because we finished up, we talked to you, Jeff, and then we were making our rounds and we're like, all right, well, let's move on. And next thing I hear out of Jeff, he's like, can I have my device back? And I'm like, oh, wait, it's still on me. But yeah, it's that small. I mean, honestly, it's the size of just a small belt buckle. You'll have no idea that it's on you.
Yeah, it's like no bigger than a $50.
Yeah.
And probably the weight of a $50, if not.
Yeah,
I mean,
not even.
When someone says wearable tech, I feel like wearable tech gets a bad rep sometimes because it can be bulky, it can be clunky, it could be this, that, or the other. This thing is so lightweight and so, I don't know, just wearable. It's just it's forgettable, and not in the technology, but it's forgettable that you even have it on. And that's the beauty of a wearable technology, is that's what you want it to be, and that's what it is. And just to be able to walk 18 and just forget it's there and to go on about your business and truly focus on learning rather than focus on, all right, well, I got to put this thing on and it's got to be here or there or whatever. You put it on once and I feel like you forget about it until you're on your drive home and are taking off your belt at the end of the day.
Yep. I've driven from place to place and I forget that it's on and I come home, I'm like, crap, did I leave this on for like the last 2 or 3 hours?
Yeah, it's a phenomenal product, guys, and if you seriously can take your time out of your day to go check it out, whether it's on Jeff's website www.slopegraide.com or checking him out on Instagram at Slopegraide, Slopegraide. He's constantly adding new content on the Instagram page, as well as some instructional videos and everything like that on his website. So yeah, Jeff, it's been a true pleasure, hooking up with you over the last week and getting to know you, getting to know your product. It's been fascinating to see the technology that's in this itty bitty little wearable device, and I hope it really catches on for you, because I found a lot of nuggets of gold of information out of your product.
Yes, and I feel like in the golf community, we're all about giving because we want to create amazing moments for each other that we talk about for a long time. So I'm actually going to do something a little bit off the cuff. For all your listeners, if you go to slopegrade.com and enter "enjoy the walk" at checkout, you're going to get 10% off.
Hey-o. Listen up, listen up, listen up.
Yeah,
Hope
there
you
you
guys
go.
caught that. Now we appreciate that, Jeff. Our listeners, I know from at least interacting with them and getting their 2 cents on the golf market in general, they're going to be very appreciative of that. And I hope to see some people of ours pick your device up and give it some reviews. And I guarantee they'll be good ones, because I know it's a great product.
Yes, we're going to have our first batch of orders in mid-March, early April. I actually just got a GoPro tonight, so there will be a lot of point of view content that I'm going to be making with Slopegraide, so that when I'm doing like the aim point reads, you'll be able to see exactly what I'm seeing, and a lot of it will make more sense as you consume that content. So just to give you an idea there, if you choose to order today, I truly appreciate it. There will be about maybe a few weeks before you get it. I'm actively working to get my first set of orders, and I promise that it'll be within the mid-March to April timeframe, right when a lot of your seasons are just starting.
It's awesome, and like you said, you're working diligently, and I know just from us meeting up with Jeff, and he's a hard worker and a grinder. Getting this product to the show this year and doing his first ever show this year, he had quite the experience with some injuries along the way, but got himself through it and put on a great show for us and everyone else there at PGA Show 2020.
Yeah.
So Jeff, thanks again for joining us. Really appreciate you hopping back on and giving us the time. And we really do look forward to doing what we can and helping, get your product out there to the masses.
I truly appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for having me. It's always a treat to come on your show, even if it is for a second time, because there are some unforeseen issues happening on the first time. But again, it's always truly a treat and pleasure to chat golf with both of you. And once again, truly grateful. Thank you.
Appreciate that, and we'll have you on sometime in the future. Have no doubt about that. So, guys, as always, enjoy the walk and go check out Jeff's product. As he said, use coupon code "enjoy the walk" at checkout on www.slopegraide.com, and you can check out his product and hopefully do some diligent reviews. So, appreciate you guys listening, and until next time, enjoy the walk.
Enjoy the walk.
That's the stuff. One shot at a time.